Dr. Ismail Ceesay is with us, as he always is on Tuesdays, and it comes hard on the heels of Essa by Fal's appearance on the program on Monday, and we can now go back to Dr. Ceesay to find out about his and government's response to some of the issues raised yesterday. Essa painted a grim picture of the future of this country under your government.
Well, it's unfortunate for a man of his education, as he claims. As he claims, yes, because
he's an educated man, no doubt about that.
But that doesn't really reflect in some of his statements. Perhaps it's politics. Sometimes politics can blind. But I mean, as someone who is educated, we expect, and as someone who wants to be president, we expect him to be very fair in his assessment of this government. That wouldn't lead him to him losing support. In fact, the way he is doing things, he's losing support by the day. He's discrediting himself. For example, the statement that the Jammeh government is better than the Barrow government. That is the
he's not the only one who
if the layman in the street says that, I would just take it with a pinch of salt. If I borrow his phrase yesterday, a pinch of salt. Says that in the street.
Actually, he says with a handful of salt.
Yes, exactly, but he forced a pinch of salt. So if a layman in the street says that, or if someone who was in lead counsel for the TRRC, if someone who was not the man who was exposing the truth in a truth commission, getting first-hand information of the atrocities of Jammeh, I would forgive that person. If someone who...
No, he said Adama Barrow is everything minus the killings.
It's not only the killings. We've seen the Jammeh Commission, what it has unearthed in terms of maladministration and the misuse and thievery of public finances under Jammeh. But if it's someone who was not born or who was very young under Jammeh's era, I would understand, because there was no experience. Anybody who, of Etta Fal's statue, will sit in front of Gambians and say, Jammeh is better than President Barrow, you are really discrediting yourself. People are listening. You see, Peter, in this world, no matter how smart you are, there are people who are smarter than you. No matter how handsome you are, there are people who are more handsome than you. No matter how dumb you are, there are people more dumb. There are people who are listening to your program every day. Smart people than myself who are listening to me and dissecting every word I say. If someone like Essa, who oversaw the TRR, the truth revelations, and got first-hand information about Jammeh's atrocities, will sit here and say Jammeh is better than Barrow, then there's a serious problem.
Maybe he's seeing things that you and I are not seeing.
No, but I'm saying we all live in this country. Now, if Jammeh was really better, why was he not in the Gambia during the Jammeh era? Why did he invest all his capital in Senegal? And he once said it, they asked him, why did you invest in Senegal? He said, because Jammeh was here, he could not invest here, because Gambia was in safe for investment. And this is the man who now came to Gambia and want to get a piece of land to invest because he thinks New Gambia is ready for business. So that is the irony there. So I think Essa should really do himself a favor and stop discrediting himself by making such statements. We don't mind people to politic. We know Barrow will win the 2026 election. That's a foregone conclusion.
Not with 75% of
Well, I'm not sure, but I know he will win the elections. In fact, I had him mention, sometimes I don't know. I had him say something very interesting, that Jammeh won the election by 53%.
No, Barrow.
Barrow won by 53%. But the Afrobarometer survey shows that Barrow got 27% in the survey. By the way, the Afrobarometer survey, let me just make it clear.
No, we'll get 27%.
No, the survey says 27%.
Yes.
The survey was done. Now, you cannot compare...
The survey was done what? On the 2021 or
no, 2026
looking
election.
to 2026?
So Afrobarometer made a survey last year.
Yes.
And they asked the citizens. And remember, Afrobarometer just take a sample size of 1,200 people. 1,200 out of 1 million registered voters. 1,200. And you ask this 1,200, if elections were to be held today, which candidate will you vote for? And they give them a list of candidates. Out of this 1,200, 27% says that they will vote for President Barrow. 17% said they would vote for lawyer Ousainou Darboe. and the rest were like 2%, 5%, 0.2%, 0.1%.
Was
and
you-
his
what-
APP,
was-
and his APP, and
Was
his
you, was
APP.
your name on it as CA leader?
Unfortunately, I don't know why CA wasn't put on the list. I didn't see CA, but even APP Sobia got, I think, 0 point something percent, if I remember right. Now, you cannot use that survey to say because Barrow got 53% in 2020, and also remember, in that particular survey, over 50% say they are either undecided, or they will not vote, or they don't know.
Over 50%.
Almost close to 50%. They say they're either undecided,
Okay.
or they will not vote, or they don't know. They don't want to answer the question. Now, if you use that survey to make a projection for the 2026 elections, where we have almost 1 million voters, and where people go to vote on issues, you are gravely mistaken. So for me, I don't see even why you see, this is what I'm talking about, the discredit, the manner in which he discredits himself. Anybody who understands how statistics works, you wouldn't make that comparison. But nonetheless, what I can confirm is that the work that President Barrow is doing in providing basic services to the people, to communities that never dreamt of having these services, like roads, like electricity, like water, like healthcare, like education, there is no way he could lose this election. The people are going to vote for him and give him a second chance. But also the peace and stability he brought, the democracy he's promoting, his attempts and his desire to fight corruption in his country, the measures he's taken to fight corruption are unmatched. And I watched some nondescript news, covering the gala protest, which was a very unfair, and saying that thousands of people protested. It wasn't thousands of people.
It wasn't thousands?
It wasn't, no. The aerial view showed it was a couple of hundred people. Not more than 500 people in that protest.
Seriously?
So, in fact, I had an issue. I called Lamin Cham. I know he's listening. When the Standard put on their head like 1,000, I said, Lamin Cham, this is a misrepresentation of the facts. It's not thousands of people. It's a couple of hundred people. And if you remove those the UDP mobilized to join, it will be maybe 75 to 80 people only be protesting. That UDP mobilized and brought people in Gala. No, it's the fact.
I mean,
they brought people in just to show.
You throw everything that goes against the government at UDP.
No, it's not that, because we see, Peter, the state has access to a lot of intel. The UDP mobilized and brought their people to the protest just to show that just to boost the crowd. If we remove those UDP people, I see some old women they brought. I pitied those people. They brought some old men and some old men to join the protest. But if they remove the UDP element there,
UDP are coming on Thursday.
Yes,
so
they can come. Of course. If they remove the UDP element there, and then just the protesters, people are just displeased, it's gonna be less than 100 people. So that news is wrong, and the manner in which now they are portraying, I can't imagine how people can be. I mean, how can you be so hateful to your country? Painting your country as is all is doom and gloom. We are not saying it's perfect. We know there are challenges of corruption, but these are systemic and these are inherited. That is why the president understands that. That is why he understands we need to fight this root and branch. That is why last time I argued that fighting corruption for us as a government is not about arresting and jailing people only. Yes, it is a deterrent, but it is not a comprehensive deterrent. What we want to do is to build the institutions and the processes and systems that can deter, that can fight corruption. That is what we are doing. That is why we build we pass anti-corruption law. That is why we strengthen the National Audit Office. That is why the GRA and other institutions are now going digital. That is why payments are not done now in offices. You go to the banks and pay. That is why the PAC is activated and they are let to operate independently. That is why the courts are let to operate independently. All these are oversight institutions that ensure that we fight corruption. Yes, it's a process, a system that has been embedded and endemic for 22 years, over 22 years. You cannot expect a government to come and correct it to the maximum.
But you would have thought,
in 8 years.
You would have thought that you've passed an anti-corruption act that is tougher than constituting the Anti-Corruption Commission. But where are we on the Anti-Corruption Commission?
Like I said, the shortlisting was done.
You've been shortlisting every week, telling us that,
but the Ministry of Justice is
and
working on that. We are working. We just want to make we do things right. For us, we need to do things right. We cannot rush things. The the goodwill is there from the government. We are committed to make sure that the Anti-Corruption Commission is set up. And when we set up an Anti-Corruption Commission, this will be people of impeccable character with high integrity. That is what we are looking for. But going back to some of the claims that Essa made, and again, layman argument on ministers should be sector experts. That's the funniest thing I've heard. You see, ministers need not be sector experts. Ministers must have vision. Ministers must be able to interpret data given to them or advice given to them by their technical team or their civil servants. Ministers must be able to lead and mobilize support. That is what ministers should be able to do. Ministers should not be sectors. Michael Gove, one of the most successful education ministers in the UK, who came up with the best education policy in the UK and also the leveling up policy in the UK, is a journalist. Another guy in the UK also, Des Brown, one of the most successful defense ministers in the UK, was never in the army. So the idea that a journalist should be in the Ministry of Information, a military officer should be Minister of Defense, a police officer should be Minister of Interior, and it's not logical. It's not logical. It doesn't happen like that. Ministers, the most successful ministers, are not sector experts in their sector. As long as you're able to interpret and listen to advice from your technicians, as long as you're able to lead and give strategic leadership, that is what is important. As long as you're able to understand and interpret data given to you and advice given to you and act and be proactive, that is what is important. If the logic is that you must be a sector expert, then perhaps maybe Essa shouldn't be running for president. He should go back to the courtroom, because then we will say also that to be president, you must have a degree in presidential affairs. But that is not the case. The most successful presidents in history, the Barack Obamas, the David Camerons, the Tony Blairs, are lawyers. They are not political scientists. We could also argue that to be a successful
president. But that's why he's running for president. He's a lawyer.
You know what I'm saying? No, I understand. I'm saying, I'm just trying to bring it to it. But they are lawyers, but they are not presidential. So it means that the most important thing is that you are able to perceive your surrounding. He can be as well a good president because he's a lawyer. The argument I'm making is that the argument that you must be an expert in a particular field for you to lead that field is bogus. It doesn't make sense.
The presidency is no, professional field that anybody goes to college for whatever.
But just like ministers, you don't have to be a journalist to be a successful information minister. No,
I agree.
That's what I'm talking about. So those kind of childish arguments really don't add anything to our debate. And I've listened to him, and most of
you dismiss it as childish.
It's childish, but also his arguments yesterday were 90% were bereft of policy. I didn't see any policy pronouncements that were realistic. And I think as someone who wants to govern, come to the radio and give us policy alternatives. And I say policy alternatives, that is, you diagnose
our own. He says everything he's discussed openly, you people have pounced on and presented as,
No, you see,
your
in
own,
fact, I could say the reverse. When Essa came to the political field, like I said, I was there. Every place I've been to, every people I've met, he goes there and tries to copycat me, what I was doing. So what I can say also he made another claim that the underbelly of the economy is rotten. I'll give you the right statistics, and the public will judge whether it is rotten or whether our economy is growing. Let's look at our real GDP growth as a country. In 2023, our GDP growth was to 4.8%. It grew in 2024 to 5.8%. And in 2025, end of this year, it is projected to grow by 5.9%. So our economy is expanding. That is one. Two, let's look at the public debt as a ratio of GDP. And this is a very important indication to understand how a particular government's economy is. In 2023, it was 75.7%. That was the debt to GDP ratio. Other countries like the US is over 100%. UK is over 100%. In 2024, this was reduced by the Barrow government to 71.8%. In 2025, it is 67.8%. So our debt to GDP ratio is going down. It's not going up. So public debt is being managed as a country. Now let's look at the budget deficit. He said our budget deficit was $3 billion. I heard him say that, which is wrong, it's false. Our budget deficit $198 million. 198 million.
1/10 of a billion.
Exactly. In 2025, and not $3 billion. And he said our GLF was 20 billion. No, our GLF is 37 billion for 2025. Again, inaccurate information. But the most important thing is inflation. If the underbelly of an economy is rotten, inflation wouldn't be brought down from 17.3% in 2023 to 7.2% in 2025. I repeat, in 2023, our inflation figures were 17.3%. Now, 2025, it is 7.2%. This is not an economy that is rotten. This is an economy that is growing with sound fiscal and monetary policies. One of the best economies right now in the sub-region is Gambia. We are far ahead of most of the countries in the sub-region. And this is proven by the World Bank, the IMF, the African Development Bank.
Who are we behind? Ghana, possibly?
Yeah, most Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and we are able to stabilize our currency, our dollar as well. It is stabilized. So some of these statements are really inaccurate statements. And I think as someone who wants to get to Marina Parade, he needs to do his research more and provide the public with accurate figures. He needs to first diagnose what we are doing wrong. In fact, he needs to understand what we are doing first. What is wrong with what we are doing? And provide solutions, and not just to make spurious claims like saying that when we went to the UNGA in 2024, we took 85 people. Again, inaccurate.
Yeah, well, it almost took you a generation.
But we gave you the figures. Less than 27 people went to the UNGA, including the president's detail. So he said 85 people. Where did he get that figure from? You see, so he cannot just come and make statements and get away with them like that. 85 people. And he said also, very interesting, that leaders who go to the UNGA co-share vehicles. I was there last year.
What did you see?
Each country of the world 193 countries, it is given a vehicle, in fact 2 or 3. In fact, the Americans, they relax your security. They took over security of all the presidents. Each president that passes, you see them with 3-4 vehicles. For some, in fact, for some from like the Israel, Turkey, they give them even 10 vehicles for security. So it depends. They do a security assessment of each. So what the FBI does and the CIA, before UNGA happens, they go to each embassy and discuss with each ambassador and its team, the defense attaches, about the security needs of each head of state coming. And they provide a security for you. Co-share in New York, I didn't see it. What I see is that each leader is given a vehicle that you sit in yourself and 2 or 3 escorts, that all this provided by the American people. All these are the Lincolns and these police vehicles that guys. So there's no co-sharing in New York. I don't know where he got that from. So that is also something that was also inaccurate in his submissions yesterday. Now, he said Kaliluwage is giving monopoly to import flour in this country. Again, inaccurate. Kaliluwage does not import flour in this country. Kaliluwage does redistribution for a company called, I think it's CMG, that does the importation. Kaliluwage does not import flour. He does redistribution. Only 2 people import flour in this country, Shaben Madi and one guy called Momodu G. Jalo. These are the ones who import flour in this country. Kaliluwage does not import. And he says that he is given money to import. He doesn't import flour. So I think, Peter, by and large, again, finally, the revised election deposits. The bill that the government took to Parliament did not have any revised election bill. The revision was done by the parliamentarians there. And you cannot hold government responsible for that. You cannot hold Balo responsible. We took a bill to Parliament. That is the role of government. But there, we maintained the fees as it were in the previous electoral bill. Parliamentarians sat there across the board, and they changed it. How do you blame the president for that? We live in a parliament. We live in a democracy. Parliament has a right to increase, and they voted for it. How do you blame the president for? If the government had taken a bill with the increment, then you could blame the government. We did not take the bill to Parliament with the increment. The increments were done in Parliament. In the electoral bill, the electoral we took to Parliament did not have any increment. So you cannot really blame the government for that. So I think, by and large, Essa has to do himself a favor. When he comes to speak, we don't mind.
Just before you, on the election issue, what about the cards that are being given out? He says they're purely meant to rig the elections? I mean, you've been to Mauritania, you've given cards out there. Why are you giving those
How
cards?
can we, election registration is not done in those countries. We register voters only in the Gambia.
Yeah, they will come back here and register and vote.
No, that is far-fetched. That is far-fetched. I mean, that is the most silliest way to rig an
But it
election.
had been proven that people from Casamas came and voted in our elections.
Casamas is closer. What about Angola? Imagine how many people can we ferry from Angola to come and vote in the Gambia? I mean, the cost alone, the logistics alone is. I mean, that doesn't make sense, Peter. This is a demand from Gambians who live in these countries who think, just like we are providing passports to those in Spain and Italy, and by law, every Gambian must get an ID card if they so demand. This is demand. These are people who are struggling in these countries, and they cannot do anything without these ID cards. And government extended the service to them, just like we're extending the service of passports to those in Italy and in Spain and in Germany, because it's demand. So if we have our Gambians who are living in Angola, in Mauritania, who are struggling they cannot even go out of the house, couldn't have a form of ID card, and the demand came for the government to do it, and the government can do it, extend the service to them. I think we should instead commend the government of His Excellency, the President, than to come up with conspiracy theories thinking that it is to rig. How can you rig elections if there are 1 million ways if you want to rig elections than to say go to Angola, give ID cards, and then you ferry all those Angolans from Angola to Gambia to come and register, and they go back and come and vote again. Because registration and voting, that's a period, that logistics, that cost, I mean, that doesn't really make sense. Anybody who understands how elections work will never believe that story. So I think 90% of what Essa submitted yesterday is all false. And I think he should do himself a favor if he wants to still maintain his respect in society. He did a good job in the TRRC, his job at the TRRC, and that accorded him a lot of respect among Gambian people. But I think he's losing all that. He's losing all that in politics, because he really...
How do you know he's losing all that?
Because we talk to people. People are very disappointed with him. I've talked as many
maybe
people,
you're talking to NPP supporters. Of course, they will be disappointed.
Peter, remember, I engage across the board, and many people who had once expressed fascination, admiration for him called yesterday to say really they are very disappointed.
They called you?
Yeah, we are very disappointed with him because of the manner in which now he's. Someone asked me, is it delusion or is it unbridled ambition? I'm not really sure what it is, but I think he needs to go back to the drawing board. If he has a research team, talk to his research team more, and rebuke them for the false information they are giving him when it comes to the radio, and get the facts right. We don't mind, like I said, Peter. These elections, we are ready to debate anybody on policy. We're ready to come up with our policy proposals as a government. We have to defend our policies, but you must also understand our policies first. You should not just come and make spurious claims. Understand our policy. What are we doing as a government? What is wrong with what we are doing? Then you tell us that this is the solution to solve the problem. Without that, Peter, there is no point.
Dr. Ceesay with us here on Coffee Time with Peter Gomez.